Hey everyone. If you've spent any time learning about Taoism, you'll know that there are kind of two big names floating around, Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi. Well, we've covered Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching pretty extensively on this channel already, but so far I have said almost nothing about Zhuangzi and the book to which he lends his name. Well, no longer, because I finally feel like doing another challenge, the kind where we break down and analyze an ancient philosophical text bit by bit until we get through it. Which means that I need to start it right now while I still feel like it, so that when the motivation inevitably runs out in a few days, I'll be left with no choice but to finish, or expose myself to the ridicule of the masses. So this is the official beginning of the Zhuangzi challenge, but before we do get into it, there is a little bit of context you need to have in order to really get the feeling for Zhuangzi and his words. So today's video will be a bit of an introduction to Zhuangzi and the world he lived in, so that we can better appreciate what he had to say. The real question behind this video is, who exactly was Zhuangzi? Well, unlike Lao Tzu, whose origin and even his very existence is mostly unknown, and who may not have even existed at all, it does seem pretty likely that Zhuangzi was a real person. The text seems to pull from personal experiences from his life, and even to include conversations that he had with others. That being said, scholars generally agree that while the first 7 chapters of the text, often called the inner chapters, might have been written by Zhuangzi himself, the remaining chapters of the Zhuangzi almost certainly weren't, and were likely written by other similarly minded thinkers around his same time. For this reason, and because there is just so much to cover in the inner chapters alone, I will be limiting the scope of this series to the inner chapters only. And now for a word on Taoist tradition and Zhuangzi's place in it. Zhuangzi lived in the Warring States period, sometime after the death of Confucius. Actually, the Zhuangzi is one of our main sources of information about Lao Tzu. For example, in chapter 3 of the inner chapters, it makes reference to Lao Tzu's funeral. There are also several mentions of conversations between Lao Tzu and Confucius, but it is hard to say whether these were fictional or whether they refer to real conversations that actually took place. All this being said, it's important to dispel some misunderstandings about early Taoist tradition. I think there's this sort of conception that Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi belong to some kind of organized group of Taoists, with standardized beliefs and practices, and a cohesive doctrine that they agreed on and passed down through the generations. But this simply isn't the case. I'm not sure, and neither are modern day scholars sure, that Zhuangzi would have even considered himself a follower of Lao Tzu at all. There are certainly many similarities between his words and the teachings of Lao Tzu, but they disagree on many points as well. For example, Lao Tzu warned against taking human distinctions too seriously, but he did occasionally accept their use, and generally seemed to prefer the weaker, subtler, more passive parties in these distinctions. Zhuangzi, however, took this disdain for distinction to its logical extremity, rejecting distinctions altogether. The important thing to understand here is that at the time of Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi, there was no Taoist organization, no Taoist canon, no Taoists. There were simply the writings of these masters and the people's opinions about them. The first known organization of Taoists to exist didn't occur until the 2nd century AD, several centuries later, and the first attempt to assemble some sort of Taoist canon was made as late as the 4th century AD. Zhuangzi wasn't any kind of disciple of Lao Tzu, he just had similar ideas. The term Taoist is just one that was applied to these people later, in an attempt to classify them, which I'm sure Zhuangzi would just have been thrilled about. Every so often I get comments from people accusing me of westernizing Taoism, or taking it out of its source context, because I don't include any information about Taoist religious practices or dogma in my videos. But these comments are based on a misunderstanding of the Taoist tradition. The early Taoist masters did not proselyte. They didn't gather disciples or set up a religion based on their teachings. These things were done centuries later by other people. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's just say one more thing about the Warring States period. This period, despite being a period of great political turmoil, is often considered to be a golden age in Eastern philosophy. One interesting effect of the turbulent political conditions of the day was that they gave rise to a wealth of thinkers and philosophers, who each had different ideas of how to solve the many problems of the time, as well as creating a climate in which they could travel from state to state, seeking to attach themselves to rulers who could be persuaded to their point of view. So in a way, the Warring States period created the need for great thinkers to think great things, and created an environment where it was possible for them to make a living by doing so. This gave rise to what has later been called the 100 schools of thought. This was a great age of theorizing on what was right and wrong, and how best to encourage the right and discourage the wrong. And there were a million different opinions on this subject. So with so much disagreement on this subject, you can kind of understand why a person like Zhuangzi might have wanted to throw up his hands and do away with right and wrong altogether. Maybe you agree with this notion, and maybe you don't. Is there a right and a wrong? I think we all have to decide this for ourselves with the help of our experiences, but mostly with the help of our intuitions. Regardless of your opinion on this matter though, there is still much to be gained from the teachings of Zhuangzi, and I hope to capture this a little bit for you guys so that you can appreciate him for what he is. And the subject of what he is brings me to my final point, because one thing that Zhuangzi was above almost all else was one of the wittiest, sassiest, and well-worded writers in all of Eastern philosophy, perhaps even philosophy in general. Zhuangzi loved to laugh at the inherent absurdities of life. He was a master with his words, but he frequently downplayed their importance. It seems that one of his main goals in writing was not to take life too seriously, and to maybe even chuckle a little bit at those who do, like Confucius for example. Surely there are times when we need to be a bit serious about things, but I think it's fair to say that we can all benefit at least a bit from Zhuangzi's laughing approach to life. After all, in a somewhat paraphrased quote from Oscar Wilde that I bet Zhuangzi would just have loved, life is far too important a thing to be taken seriously. So with that in mind, I present to you all the inner chapters of the Zhuangzi, and I very much hope that you enjoy them. So now just one last note on how this challenge will play out. This time around will be a little bit different than the Tao Te Ching challenge. Since the chapters of the Zhuangzi are longer than those of the Tao Te Ching, I'll be making several videos for each chapter, as many as I think it takes to cover them. However, I'm not going to be doing these as daily uploads. It was fun to do this with the Tao Te Ching, but I have a lot more going in my life now than I did then, and I want to be able to balance this challenge with my work and my family a little bit better. So I'm not committing to daily uploads, I'm just going to release the videos in as much time as it takes me to finish them. But I will promise you guys at least one video per week. If I happen to get them done faster, I'll put them out faster, but one video a week is the minimum. Lastly, as a companion to the challenge, I'm pretty sure I'm going to bring back the Discord. I know some of you were kind of mad when it went away after the Tao Te Ching challenge, but honestly, I just really don't like maintaining it all the time, and I think for now I'd like to just keep it as a thing that happens during the challenges, a sort of study companion while we break down a text. So I'll put the link to the new Discord in the description of the video, but just know that if you're watching this video after the challenge has already ended, the link probably won't work for you. Go ahead and look for a link in my most recent video or in the channel description and use that one. Okay, I think that about ties everything up. I really hope you guys enjoyed the Zhuangzi as much as I've been enjoying it, and I will see you all next time for Chapter 1. Thank you for watching, peace and blessings.